Hey, everybody, I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. And a couple years ago, we were in Alabama with family visiting some friends down there. And there was a high school production of Peter and the Wolf going on, which is fun. It's fun for kids because each character gets their own instrument and their own theme. And we're used to that because Star Wars, each character has their own theme. But that idea is kind of drawn from stuff like Peter and the Wolf. And in Star Wars, you get ba-ba-ba-ba-da-da, ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. That's your Jedi theme. And Leia gets a theme. Da, 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 da. Well, really quickly, my kids are picking up on these themes in Peter and the Wolf, and they're really getting into it. And what's the famous one from Peter and the Wolf? Da, 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 da. I think that's right. And so the play goes on and unfolds, and the plot is not terribly dramatic. But my kids had a blast, and were so enamored with what they'd just seen that they really wanted to go and collect autographs from the high school kids that put on this version of Peter and the Wolf. And so we were like, well, let's go back there. I don't exactly know that you kids need autographs, but let's do it. That was special and memorable and meaningful, even if I don't totally understand everything about what you kids are feeling right now. And so I remember Camilla went and navigated her way through everything to make sure that the kids could go and interact with the cast members and make this thing happen. Again, why exactly? It's tough to quantify, but the kids who performed were really friendly, and it's this nice, warm, happy family memory for us. I think in Matthew chapter 19, we get a similar situation going on. We've got a geographic move that is occurring where most of this story has happened way up north in Galilee and even north of Galilee, centered around the Sea of Galilee and this town of Capernaum. And now the story is starting to shift south. At the beginning of chapter 19, you'll recall, it says, when Jesus had finished saying these things, he left Galilee and went into the region of Judea to the other side of the Jordan. So we're crossing state lines. We're moving somewhere new. New people are joining this entourage and wanting to come and be around whatever it is that this Jesus kingdom thing is about. And when we get to verse 13 of chapter 19, we have a situation where a bunch of little kids who maybe don't totally understand what all of this is about still really want to be around Jesus because he's the main event. He's the attraction. He's the exciting thing. And my guess is that there are probably some moms like my wife who are making sure that these kids get to make their way over to this intriguing character who is created an interesting, memorable moment, again, even though maybe not everybody totally understands what all of it means in the profound theological sense. There's an innocence, an interest in this. And so Matthew 19:13, it says, "Then little children were brought to Jesus for him to place his hands on them and pray for them. But the disciples rebuked those who brought them. Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me and don't hinder them, for the kingdom of heaven belongs to such as these.' When he had placed his hands on them, he went on from there." Now, in order to picture what's going on here, that little geographical note that was thrown out a minute ago, I think it really matters because you got to understand, these people have not been witness to all the things that you and I have been witness to going through the book of Matthew. We are in a decidedly new setting to you and me. For most of us living half a world away, a couple thousand years after the fact, these political lines have been redrawn a zillion times over between then and now. This just isn't going to pop for us. It's like, oh, wow, the people would be different. But picture it this way. If you're from my country and a whole story takes place in rural Wyoming, and then the whole story shifts and now it's in Dallas, you would never think to yourself like, oh, it's probably all the same people, all the same characters, same culture, same everything. Whoa. Nah, Texas is a different world. Things changed dramatically between place one and place two, and you couldn't assume that the people in Dallas would have a functioning knowledge of all these little things that happened in the little rural Wyoming setting that hypothetically our imaginary story happened in first. Likewise here, you just can't assume that these Judea people knew much of anything about what was going on in Galilee. They would have heard rumors and rumblings, but most of their experience with Jesus would not include his teaching. It would just be what has happened here. Large crowds followed Jesus and he healed them there. That's about what they've encountered at this point. My point is this. These families that have brought their kids out to meet Jesus, they don't see the whole picture yet. They're on the front end. They're where you and I were before the Sermon on the Mount coming out of chapter 4, where there's some interesting rumors, and we've got some people who obviously follow him, but we don't know what the kingdom is. We don't know what the values of it are. We don't know where we fit. That's where they are. And so what happens? Well, some families encounter this thing together and they see what's going on, and there's Jesus just sitting right over there. And what do little kids want to do after they go to their first rock show? If there's a line to meet the rock star, you go over and you wait in the line and you have them sign your thing, and the kid's all bashful, and that's just how it is. If you go to the high school production of Peter and the Wolf, you try and catch up with the cast members afterwards. Likewise, these kids saw somebody who seemed talented and gentle and someone who could do things that are miraculous and good and right. And a kid's usually got a pretty decent sniffer when it comes to things that are good and things that are not good. There's a cynicism that sets in with age that causes us maybe not to be quite as effective as detecting that when we get older. And so these kids are sheepishly walking up to Jesus or being taken over to Jesus. That's the exact language. Then little children were brought to Jesus. So it's passive voice, and that passive were brought sounds like a nurturing mom that wants to make the connection. And I imagine as they get closer to Jesus, their courage goes out of them, and they're like, I don't know if I want to walk over there or not. And they're hugging their mom's leg and kind of looking sideways at Jesus sitting over here on this rock. And they want to talk to him, but they can't think of what to say. It's like when one of my friends who's got a big YouTube following came to town a few months ago, and a bunch of kids wanted to come and say hello, and they were all excited for my buddy to get to town. But when he actually got here, they held onto their mom's legs and were afraid to talk to him for a long time. I picture exactly that kind of environment here. But the moms or whoever is bringing the children to Jesus, they understand that there's some sort of blessing to be conferred here. Something amazing is happening. They're doing this thing that we see throughout Matthew and the other Gospels, where the people who get it right are the ones who might not be able to give you a theological treatise on why this is a big deal, but they understand that not just Jesus in general, specifically this moment right now, with Jesus being here in our neighborhood right now, this point in time, saying these words with these people, this is a pretty special occasion. It's at the heart of what Peter was trying to get right when he wanted to set up booths back at the Transfiguration. It's what Mary was getting right when she was like, I'm just going to sit here and interact with Jesus. We can make food later. It's what that lady who burned through all of that expensive perfume crying and washing Jesus' feet got right when she realized that her dumb perfume didn't matter nearly as much as the transcendent value of this Jesus who is in front of her. That transcendence of the moment is what Jesus was pointing to when he's following up with the crowds after John the Baptist sends his disciples to ask whether Jesus is actually the one. And Jesus is saying, like, there's something very special about this moment because I'm here. I am with you. There'll be plenty of time for other things later on, for mourning, for concern about this or that. But right now, if you guys really understood what was in front of you, you would be reacting differently. Well, these people in this scenario in Matthew 19, they don't really understand what's happening in front of them, but they're still willing to take the chance to walk up and be like, I don't get it, but I know this is a really big deal. And in the moment, they can't help but drag themselves over there, drag their kids over there. And the disciples, I think, in a well-intentioned attempt to look out for Jesus, who, I mean, come on, friends, let's follow the course of action here. He's taken a beating. He's taken a beating from his own family. He's experienced loss in his own family. He's got people who actively and unapologetically, very publicly want to kill him. He's got people who are mad. He's been kicked out of places for doing things that are right and redemptive. He knows what's coming next in his life. He's been telling his disciples for, 2-3 chapters now, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, I'm going to die, and it's going to be ugly. He's got kind of a lot on his mind. And so the disciples, trying to look out for him, are like, no, that's enough. Mr. Jesus needs a little bit of time by himself right now. We will have another signing tomorrow at 3 p.m. Thank you so much for being here. We do need you to disperse. They're trying to do the security thing, the entourage thing, and Jesus sees what's going on, and he doesn't care about that stuff. He just invites the kids over. And you'll notice that in this account, Jesus doesn't chew out his disciples like, oh, you guys incompetent idiot. What are you doing? Let the kids come to me. How can you not know? No, he's just gentle and welcoming toward the children. And tomorrow we'll go from thinking about what this scene might have looked like to thinking about what this scene means. And I think we're going to see that this is a repetition of a very significant theme about what it looks like when somebody comes to the kingdom the right way and is received into the kingdom. I think there's going to be a lot to unpack, and I think it will be very worth our time. And I look forward to doing that tomorrow. In the meantime, I want to say thank you to everybody who took the time to go and check out that new Ironwood Rhino podcast that I just started. It's a different feel than what we're doing here in that there's always a guest, and that the guests all come with a weird, strange outlier story, stuff that is very difficult to make sense of or to categorize. But with each of those stories, we have the opportunity, one, to just hear a cool, interesting, fun story from somebody who's fun and cool and interesting, get to know somebody better. But two, we get to use that as a thought exercise to think about thinking, to think about how we know when things are true and how we know when things are not. And the skill set that I hope we're nurturing and sharpening over on Ironwood Rhino, I think it's something that's going to benefit us a lot when we look at the claims of the New Testament, when we look at the claims of Jesus, when we think about all that goes into belief in this kind of a God and the kingdom that's behind it. As I said the other day, I've gotten to know you being the people who listen to this program, I think pretty well. I think you will figure out very quickly what I'm going for over on Ironwood Rhino and how it corresponds to what we're working on here. I would be so honored if you would go and give that a listen, maybe even consider sharing it. The other thing I would ask, and this is a big ask, I understand that, but if you would rate and review that Ironwood Rhino program, that is a massive help to me in the early going of that podcast. If you've got multiple devices, I would take the multiple ratings and reviews. Seriously, thanks for giving that a listen. Thanks for talking shop about Matthew 19 stuff. We'll do more of it tomorrow. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.